I'd like to call this meeting to order. We'll start with roll call. Director Drake.
Liz Drake, Director, District 3.
Hiroshietto, Director, District 5.
Claire Wilson, Director, District 2.
Jeffrey McAnalloy, Director, District 1.
Carol Gregory, Director, District 4.
Tammy Campbell, Superintendent.
And now if you'll all please rise for the presentation of the colors by Federal Way High School JROTC. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. At this time, I entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda.
I move that the Board of Education approve the meeting agenda of May 23rd, 2017 as submitted.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Now entertain a motion for the approval of the required approvals agenda.
I move that the Board of Education approve the required approvals agenda of May 23rd, 2017 as submitted.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And now we'll do an introduction of new administrative staff. Dr. Campbell.
I'd like to invite Chief Communications Officer Cassie Swinson up to the podium to introduce our new administrators. And as they come up, I will say that each year we have administrators who take on other roles, and they are promoted both internally and externally. And we see our hiring processes as a way to continue to ensure we have the most highest performing team focused on our strategic plan and serving as advocates for our scholars. And I'm excited to hear about this new wave who will be joining Team Federal Way.
Board and Superintendent Dr. Campbell. It is my pleasure to introduce new principal and administrative leadership to the team at Federal Way Public Schools beginning in the 2017-18 school year. Some of our administrators have chosen Federal Way Public Schools to offer their experiences and talents and to offer their leadership experience. I am pleased to share the appointment of the principal of Camelot Elementary for the 2017-18 school year. Joe Costi is currently serving as the planning principal of Sahalee Middle School, assisting and preparing for the transition of the school to become TAF at Sahalee in the 2017-18 school year. Previously, Joe was an assistant principal at Nautilus K-8, where he worked with the leadership team to develop a vision, mission, and implementation plan for Nautilus K-8's shift to becoming a STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics lighthouse site. He has also helped to implement positive behavior intervention and supports school-wide and worked to refine the professional learning community's process and strengthen guided reading practices. He previously served in the Kent School District as a teacher, Title I Learning Assistance Program interventionist, Dean of Students, and principal intern. He chaired and facilitated the school improvement team at Glenridge Elementary in that district, where he also led the PBIS committee and co-led intervention and professional learning focused on positive behavior supports. He received a Bachelor of Arts degree in Elementary Education K-8 from Washington State University and a Master's in Educational Administration from Grand Canyon University. He received principal certification from Washington State University. Joe has a passion for early childhood learning and is eager to work with staff and the parent community to prepare all students to perform at high levels. Please join me in congratulating Joe Costi.
Good evening, Board President McAnally, members of the board, and Superintendent Dr. Campbell. I couldn't be more excited to join the great work that's taking place at Camelot Elementary. I am eager to share my passion around equity and scholar voice to strengthen the work around goal 1 and 2 of the strategic plan that's taking place right now at Camelot. I feel strongly that my leadership experiences, both in Federal Way and in Kent, have provided me with an array of tools that will support every scholar in achieving high levels of success at Camelot. Thank you for this opportunity.
I am pleased to share the appointment of the principal of Sunnycrest Elementary for the 2017-18 school year. Shayna Watkins is currently the assistant principal at Mirror Lake Elementary. She leads the Positive Behavior Intervention and Supports Committee and provides building professional development focused on redesigning curriculum to meet Common Core state standards. She planned and presented year-long progressive professional development on effective response to intervention cycles and led a building book study on learning targets. Prior to coming to Federal Way Public Schools, Shayna was an assistant principal at Neely O'Brien Elementary, a Spanish dual language school in the Kent School District, and was a teacher, Title I coordinator, assessment coordinator, library media specialist, and principal intern at Daffodil Valley Elementary in Puyallup. She began her teaching career at Emerald Hills Elementary, also in Puyallup. She received a Bachelor of Arts in Education from Pacific Lutheran University and a Master of Arts in Education with principal certification from City University. Shayna is a strong instructional leader experienced in the development of highly effective professional learning communities and in using data collection to inform instructional next steps. She collaborated with the Kiwanis Club on the Building Upgrade Student Achievement Recognition Program and planned and supervised a National Walk to School Day event with the East Pierce Fire and Rescue. Please join me in congratulating Shayna Watkins.
Thank you. Good evening, Board President McAnally, members of the board, and Superintendent Dr. Campbell. I just want to take this brief moment to express my gratitude and excitement for being given this amazing opportunity to be the next principal of Sunnycrest Elementary. I've already had the opportunity to spend time with the Sunnycrest staff, scholars, and families, and I am amazed at the wonderful supportive learning community that is already established. And I am looking forward to coming back and sharing with you our many future successes and accomplishments. Again, thank you so much for this opportunity.
I am pleased to share the appointment of principal of Lakota Middle School for the 2017-18 school year. Angela Williamson is currently assistant principal at Illahee Middle School. There, she assisted in creating a school culture that promotes ongoing improvement of learning and teaching for scholars and staff. She also has led the development, implementation, and evaluation of a data-driven plan for increasing student achievement. Prior to becoming assistant principal, Angela was an instructional coach, also at Illahee, and served as administrative intern at Pacific Cascade Freshman Campus in the Issaquah School District. She previously was a Spanish teacher for the Bellevue, Issaquah, and Franklin Pierce districts, as well as at Loyola High School in Los Angeles. Angela earned a bachelor's degree in Spanish from the University of Washington and a Master of Education degree from Pacific Lutheran University. She received principal certification from City University. She has a strong and effective coaching lens for improving student learning through reflective inquiry and alignment regarding classroom instruction, environment, and culture. Angela has created and sustained a master schedule structure in place for job-embedded collaboration, allowing teachers to access instructional and climate and culture learning connected to strategic plan goals on a weekly basis. She wrote and received the Navigation 101 Advisory Grant from the OSPI, Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, and served on the Strategic Plan Core instructional team. Please join me in congratulating Angela Williamson.
Good evening, Board President McAnally, members of the board, and Superintendent Dr. Campbell. It is with vision, commitment, and tenacity that I stand before you to serve the students, families, and staff at Lakota Middle School. With a systems approach and a lens of equity, I am excited to maximize the educational possibilities for our scholars in partnership with all of our community members. Thank you.
I am pleased to share the appointment of principal of Totem Middle School for the 2017-18 school year. Rudy Baca has been the principal of Sunnycrest Elementary the past 9 years and has created a strong K-5 dual language program for scholars attending Sunnycrest Elementary. Dedicated to all scholars, including our English language learners, Rudy has built capacity in his learning and leadership by taking additional ELL coursework and implemented the 50-50 Spanish dual language program at Sunnycrest Elementary. This program began at the kindergarten level, and the first graduating 5th grade class will be moving to Totem Middle School next year. Additionally, Mr. Baca is committed to supporting the whole child as he has led and implemented a PBIS school-wide program in support of Goal 2, Whole Child, Thriving, Confident, Responsible Individuals. His experience includes planning principal at Panther Lake Elementary School and a primary teacher at the elementary level. His educational expertise includes a K-8 endorsement in education and grades 4-12 science endorsement. Graduating from Western New Mexico University with a Bachelor of Science in Education, Mr. Baca also completed a Master in Administration degree from City University. Please join me in congratulating Rudy Baca.
Good evening, Board President McAnalloy, members of the board, and Superintendent Dr. Campbell. I am absolutely humbled to stand before you as the new principal of Totem. I'm proud to be part of your admin team, and I absolutely can't wait to get to work. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I am pleased to share the appointment of Assistant Principal of Camelot Elementary for the 2017-18 school year. Natalie Daniels is currently an administrative intern at Wildwood Elementary and a program administrative intern in the Multilingual Services Department. She is also a math professional development facilitator for the district. Previously, Natalie was a 3rd grade teacher at Wildwood, a lead teacher educator and coach, teacher educator for Teach for America, and a 3rd through 5th grade chair and teacher for Morningside K-18 Academy in Miami. She had prior experience as a summer fellow for Envision Schools, New Sector Alliance, and Oakland, California as a teacher in the public school system in Quito, Ecuador. Natalie received a bachelor's degree in international studies and a master's degree in instructional leadership and curriculum from the University of Washington, and will earn principal certification from the Danforth Educational Leadership Program, also at the University of Washington. Please join me in congratulating Natalie Daniels.
Good evening, Board President McAnalloy, members of the board, and Superintendent Dr. Campbell. I am excited and honored to serve as the Assistant Principal at Camelot Elementary. It is my personal commitment to ensure that all scholars receive an excellent education and are connected to the adults in the building. With high expectations, high support, and no excuses, I look forward to supporting the implementation of Goal 1 and Goal 2 while providing every scholar an equitable opportunity for success. Thank you.
I am pleased to share the appointment of Assistant Principal of Rainier View Elementary for the 2017-18 school year. Amy Rapata is currently a district-wide substitute principal in the Steilacoom School District, where she previously was a teacher as well as a district highly capable program coordinator. She previously served in roles as assistant headmaster, head teacher, and an elementary teacher at Cougar Mountain Academy. She also was an elementary teacher and language arts curriculum specialist for the Highline School District. Amy earned a bachelor's degree in elementary education and language arts from Seattle Pacific University, a master's in education, curriculum, and instruction from the University of Washington, and principal certification from Seattle Pacific University. Please join me in congratulating Amy Rapata.
Good evening, Board President McAnalloy, members of the board, and Superintendent Dr. Campbell. Thank you so much for the opportunity to serve the Federal Way School District and Rainier View Elementary students, staff, and families. I am most excited to help all learners reach their full potential academically, socially, and emotionally. And I look forward to partnering with you to ensure that all scholars find their voice and accomplish their dreams.
I am pleased to share the appointment of Assistant Principal of Illahee Middle School for the 2017-18 school year. Tara Lee is currently an Assistant Principal at Todd Beamer High School. While at Todd Beamer High School, Tara has provided staff training in the use of restorative practices and has also been working on revising and updating the school safety plan. Along with the rest of the administrative team at Todd Beamer, she has been working on decreasing the number of failing grades by focusing on on-time attendance and discipline data markers. Prior to her assistant principal position at Todd Beamer High School, she was an instructional coach and English teacher for the district. She also served as an EduPoint trainer, AVID coordinator, and beginning teacher mentor. Tara earned a Bachelor of Arts in English and a Master's in Teaching from Seattle Pacific University and Principal Certification from Western Governors University. Please join me in congratulating Tara Lee.
Good evening, Board President McAnally, board members, and Superintendent Dr. Campbell. I am thrilled to be leaving Todd Beamer, but to go over to Illahee as an assistant principal. I'm grateful for all that I've learned this year at Todd Beamer High School, and I plan to carry that forward at Illahee. As I've spoken with teachers and staff members at Illahee, a theme emerges, and that is they really want to do always what is best for kids. That is on the forefront of their mind with every conversation, and I'm excited to be part of that. Thank you.
I am pleased to share the appointment of Assistant Principal of Lakota Middle School for the 2017-18 school year. Justin Booker is currently Assistant Principal at Federal Way High School. At Federal Way, he led school-wide implementation of PBIS, restorative justice, and multi-tiered system of supports. He also led school-wide implementation of a grade 9 college and career course. Students enrolled in the course had 15% fewer failing grades at the end of the first semester compared to previous years. Prior to joining Federal Way Public Schools, he was a physical education teacher, teacher on special assignment, athletic director, and summer school principal for Oakland Unified School District in California. He earned a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and Law, Society and Justice from the University of Washington, a Master of Public Administration from California State University, East Bay, and administrative credentials from the Urban Leadership Program, also at California State University, East Bay. Please join me in congratulating Justin Booker and his adorable son.
Good evening, Board President McAnally and members of the board, and Superintendent Dr. Campbell. I'm extremely excited to be going to Lakota Middle School and look forward to continuing the great work that's happening there. I'm just ready to get to work.
Thank you. And now, while most of you are here, we'll do good news announcements.
All right, I get to start things off this evening. We are so proud of the Federal Way High School Pacific Islander Club, who took home multiple awards at the 3rd Annual Samoan Arts and Academics Competition at Highline College. The club's name is Lumanai Ole Pacifica, which means Future of the Pacific. First, we want to start out by recognizing the individual student awards. Please come forward when I call your name. Student with the highest GPA overall, Shovana Semisi, 3.85 GPA. Please come forward. Scholars with the top GPA in Lumanai Ole Pacifica, the Federal Way Club are Heavenly Tupatala, 3.87, and Alfonso Tupatala, 3.64. $1,000 scholarship. Leapa a Natele Atanoa. She there? $700 scholarship, Raymond Westerland. $500 scholarship, Kelea Lang. Now I welcome the whole club to come forward to be recognized, including Mana Tuiana, club advisor, who will accept all certificates for the rest of the students. The club won the overall competition and the following group awards. So I'm going to read the group awards and then maybe everyone come up because it certainly is worth listening to. Award of Academic Excellence, which recognizes the club with the highest GPA. The club's GPA is 3.1. First place, Royal Court. Third place, La Una, speech performed by MJ Aprila. And that's first place, Ulufale, which is the group singing. First place, Ma'ulu'ulu, group dance. First place, Sasa, which is the large group dance. First place, Sivatama, which is the group dance. First place, Sivatane, which is the girls' dance. And second place, Tapu'u, which is the solo dance performance, which was performed by Keleo Lang. You want members? Members, please come forward before I read the last paragraph. If you're a member of the club, please come forward. You're here for a reason. Luma Naiole Pacifica describes themselves not only as a club, but rather a family. They welcome any student who wants to participate. We are so proud of the great leadership and effort this group exudes. This effort is in direct support of District Strategic Plan Goal 3, active learners, engaged, empowered, critical thinkers. Awesome. Congratulations to all of you. All right. The Decatur High School Chamber and Concert Choirs and Orchestra made an impressive showing at the Anaheim Heritage Festival of Music held at the Fantasyland Theater in Disneyland. Over 40 schools from 9 different states and Canadian provinces attended this highly competitive festival. Thank you to Landon Polankton, choir officer, and Lila Klein, orchestra officer, for collecting the certificates for all students. Please come forward now. Will the rest of the Decatur High School scholar musicians and music staff who are present please come forward to be recognized? If you're a musician from Decatur, please come forward. Just listen to these accomplishments. The concert choir and orchestra finished first place gold in their respective divisions. The Chamber Singers finished second place gold. All three groups were awarded the prestigious Educators Award for scoring an average of 95 or above. The orchestra was voted overall outstanding ensemble in all string divisions by the judges. The school's music department took the overall festival sweepstakes award. Beyond the awards, Decatur's director of music, Steve Goring, said these scholars represented the district with great pride when they conducted themselves with the utmost dignity, professionalism, and grace in their triumphs. These efforts are in direct support of Goal 3 of our strategic plan, active learners, engaged, empowered, critical thinkers, and Goal 4, content area competence, mastery of all subjects. Way to go, Gator musicians. Awesome.
And moving on. All varsity level scholars in good academic standing at their schools are eligible to receive the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association Athlete of the Week Award. Congratulations to Decatur High School's Marcos Santos for being selected. Come on up, Marcos. Marcos was selected as the 4A Washington Interscholastic Activities Association Boys Athlete of the Week. Marcos, you are amazing. You scored 6 goals in 2 games with back-to-back hat tricks versus Federal Way and Thomas Jefferson High Schools. After the award was announced, Marcos scored another 3 goals versus Enumclaw for his 3rd consecutive hat trick performance. Marcos plans to play soccer in college, but has not committed anywhere yet. Ultimately, he would love to play professional soccer. Well done, Marcos. This effort is in direct support of Goal 3 of our strategic plan, active learners, engaged, empowered, critical thinkers, and Goal 4, content area competence, mastery of all subjects. Way to go after your dreams, Marcos. We are watching with keen anticipation.
In April, Illahee Middle School Saturday Scholars Program partnered with community members to implement a fishing event called Dads and Scholars, Rods and Reels, at Steel Lake Park and Federal Way. The Saturday Scholars Program includes students of color who need support with math and reading. The scholars volunteer their time to come to school on select Saturdays to learn how to be better students, plan for the future, and work towards content area competency in the core subjects of math and reading. Goal 4 of the district strategic plan. I would like to invite these scholars forward to be recognized. Please come forward when I call your name. Elijah Jennings. Isaiah Jennings. Deshani Rucker. D'Amico Rucker. Jalen Curran Dennis. Arlandis Jones. Malik Agbo. Ahmad Zayad. Aaron White. Malachi Hunter, Diamond Johnson, and Josiah Lee. With Principal Jerry Warren and the dads and other leaders who support this effort, please come forward now too. On the Saturday trip, the boys were given life lessons on how hard work and overcoming failure will keep them on the path to reaching their dreams. Our students and dads reported the fishing experience being the best of their lives. Although there were not many fish caught, being outdoors with their kids made the experience well worth the time. We are so proud of these scholars and these supporters. We believe in you and your brightest future. Thank you. And congratulations. Thank you so much.
This next recognition is in direct support of two goals of our strategic plan: Goal 4, content area competence, and Goal 5, persistence to graduation. We'd like to acknowledge two students who have been named as finalists in the 2017 National Merit Scholarship Program. Out of the 1.6 million juniors that apply, 15,000 finalists are chosen. About half of the finalists will win national scholarships, earn the National Merit Scholar title, and share in the $33 million worth of scholarships. Our two finalists are Cindy M., Todd Beamer High School, and Justin Kwan, Federal Way High School. To be considered a finalist, the student must have one of the highest PSAT scores in his or her respective state. In addition, the student must submit an application detailing why he or she should be chosen and identify leadership, employment, honors, and awards. Cindy met and surpassed these requirements with very high PSAT scores, taking the maximum amount of AP courses, 7 AP classes out of an 8-period day, volunteering, and being president of the Todd Beamer High School National Honors Society. Justin also received very high PSAT scores. Justin is involved in clubs such as the Robotics Club, Speech and Debate, as well as the Washington Aerospace Scholars. Additionally, he has won several awards in speech and debate. Cindy and Justin, we're very proud of you and wish you the very best in this endeavor.
Next item on our agenda is Legislative Liaison Update. Director Drake.
So here we go. First of all, I'd like to do a great big shout out to Gary Robertson, who has been relentlessly tackling our senator in particular, Mark Malosha, and working with our state representatives on the whole issue of McCleary. So big shout out. Thank you for all the work you do for our scholars. So today marks the last day of the first, and I say first because there are more to follow. First special session. To say nothing has been achieved might be an understatement because there's a lot of frustration being achieved and a lot of anger and a lot of division. And really, we're not achieving the goal of fully funding education, basic education. There's a lot of talk, a lot of rhetoric going on, and I hope I'm not treading on your toes, Gary, but I would like Christine Reeves, our state representative, puts out the most amazing communications. They do bi-weekly phone calls so that we can talk about what's going on at Olympia. And she brought into essence what's going on better than I ever could. So I'm going to read from her most recent article. Senate Republicans passed a budget that includes two areas Democrats simply do not agree with. First, they raised property taxes by about $5.5 billion statewide, which directly hurts middle-class families, homeowners, and businesses across the state. Second, they make significant cuts to the social safety net. This is in their proposed budget. And local school levies that pay for after-school clubs, activities, sports, art, and music programs. The House Democrats passed a budget that fully funds education without making the Senate's cuts. We do so not by raising property taxes, but by asking the wealthiest people in our state to pay a little bit more of a fair share. The House plan ends tax breaks given to the wealthy few, like the capital gains and corporate tax preferences, from which almost no one in our state but the richest among us benefit. The House plan also provides real relief to most small businesses, cutting or eliminating their business and occupation tax to ultimately keep more money in local communities. As you can see, there are options to discuss and vigorous debate to be had in your legislature. Despite these options, Senate Republicans refuse to negotiate, and we're now at risk of a second special session. So guess what? Nothing's happening, so we are moving into a second special session. It is reported that our governor, Governor Inslee, will announce tomorrow that the second session will commence on Thursday. We just wait with bated breath and hope that some of the needs that we have to fully fund basic education in our school district starts happening. On a brighter note, I, along with some board members from Tukwila, visited OSPI last week and met with a number of people from OSPI, including the Chief of Staff, Jamila Thomas, and then Director of Transportation, Regional Transportation Director, and various other people that could add to the conversation that Federal Way and Tukwila is engaging about transportation for our McKinney-Vento scholars. And it was a really positive meeting. Really felt that everyone around the table was listening and wanting to figure out ways to help not only our districts, but all the districts in the state. I met with Dr. Campbell after the visit, and we've had a really good conversation. And I feel that we're making headway, which is a really nice feeling. on one front at least. That's really it.
I want to thank you for giving me the framework for the homeless report that Tukwila does, because I think that's a good model that we could be using to create a report, and our team will be looking at doing something like that for the fall.
Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is public comment. There are blue sheets on the back table if you're interested in making a comment. So first comment this evening comes from Betty Taylor.
Cleaned out the house up in here. My goodness gracious. I know this ain't no city council, but I'm used to going to them. But, you know, I like to stand up here and say I just give honor to everybody in the podium. You all are awesome, doing a great job. I like to give accolades to Sacagawea Middle School, junior high, middle school, because tomorrow is a big event at Sacagawea. And y'all know I've been talking about these lays for the homeless, you know, and basically we're meeting at Sacagawea from 5 to 7 o'clock. The goal is to make 100 lays. The lays will consist of lotion and soap and toothpaste, toothbrushes, combs, deodorant, shampoo, body wash, those essential things that the homeless can use. After we do the event, the goal is to keep the lays within the district to serve our homeless youth in the schools. We are making 100. We have 2 hours to make 100 lays. I don't really know how many people are going to show up, but we need the hands, we need the arms, we need everybody's support and participation, because it's going back into the district. It's not going to nobody else but the district. I've come to learn that we have a total of 500 homeless youth in the Federal School District, 500 youth, but we are just making 100 lays. And then, you know, it would be good, you know, to not just focus on Sacagawea, but what if we can do this in every school? What if we can just send the lays? What if we can make 500 lays, you know, to give to our homeless youth in the schools, because they do need lotion, they do need soap, they do need toothbrush, they do need toothpaste. They need those things. So it will behoove everyone to please. We're going to have food. We're going to have pizza, pop, potato chips, water, and y'all can eat to your heart's delight. But yeah, we want the community support. We want the school support, and come out and support your own, because this is for you. Nobody else but for you. That's all.
Thank you, Betty. Next is Gary Robertson concerning McCleary.
Good evening, Board President McAloy, board members, and Superintendent Dr. Campbell. My name is Gary Robertson, and tonight I'd like to expand on what Board Member Liz Drake said about the McCleary decision, and thank you for the compliment. I appreciate that. As everyone knows, in January 2012, that was over 5 years ago, the state Supreme Court rendered the McCleary decision, which stated the legislature had an obligation to fully fund K through 12 education. And after years of delay, it was supposed to get done this legislative session. However, as Board Member Drake mentioned, they are now at the end of their first special session and making no progress at all. And she did cover what I was going to say about Christine Reeves, our representative, but as you know, there's two sides to every story. So according to Senator Mark Malosia, the Senate Republican tax plan does not raise taxes because it's revenue-neutral property tax reform. Senator Malosia also believes it's a great budget because it raises education and human services spending the greatest amount in state history and solves McCleary. Unfortunately, the problem with his explanation is he doesn't answer the $64,000 question, which is where is all the money coming from to pay for this, quote, ideal solution that solves McCleary. And I asked them that question by emailing them, and I never got a response. So we're in the dark. So, but that's their proposal. And again, what Representative Reeves mentioned the Democrats come up with is a couple of the solutions that were proposed by the citizens at the listening meeting that was held over 2 years ago at the Renton that we attended. Okay. The other problem is neither one of them addressed another major issue that we're all concerned about, and that's the local levies. Because you know Seattle and Bellevue got a lot more money than we do because they got more property value. So is that fair? No. But what are we going to do about it? Well, there's been one solution. It's called the levy swap, where everything goes into one pot. But again, no discussion about this issue at all. And the problem with the Republicans, like Ms. Drake said, is they refuse to negotiate because their response is my way or the highway. And that's not going to accomplish anything because it won't work. To reach a fair and equitable compromise, both parties will have to sit down and negotiate seriously. And that's the bottom line. We know a second special session is inevitable, but when this dilemma will be resolved is anybody's guess. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Gary. And next is Joe Barrett concerning HICAP.
Good evening, Board President McAnally, members of the board, and Superintendent Dr. Campbell. So I would like to bring to attention the move away from the self-contained 3-4-5 classroom for HICAP at Lakeland to a research-based cluster model. As a parent of a third grader enrolled in the program, we just became aware of this within the last week or so. And there's a huge outcry from the other parents involved in this also. It's a highly successful program that's been in place for 10 plus years with lots of kids graduating through it. And we're just struggling to understand why it would be eliminated on such a short notice. It's just, you know, we had a class meeting at Lakeland the other evening, and there was just a really emotional, huge turnout with all the parents for this program. And we can't really get a clear understanding on whether it's being eliminated on the school level or the district level, and so there's some clarification that needs to be addressed there. So, in summary, that's just it. It's a huge problem, you know, that's arisen recently. So, I would just like some clarification, and to get that addressed, I guess, is where I'm at. So, thanks for your time.
Thank you. All right, next is superintendent comments. Dr. Campbell.
Good evening. Just a couple of big highlights I want to share. We've engaged in some board school visits going into classrooms, and I have to applaud the board for becoming so keen on what good instruction looks like and observing some pretty high quality practices across our school. We'll continue to do that. What I think really makes this a powerful experience is that we don't tell the principals that we're coming, so it's totally unannounced. And lots of learning in terms of implementation of our strategic plan. On Sunday, I went to the Korean school fundraiser. What an incredible event to see the Korean community come together in support of their scholars, specifically around language and culture. This is something that's an annual event, and what was also important is to have leaders in the community from the Korean community talking about our facilities and how they could support us and really leaning into our schools. The last thing that I'll talk about is, as you know, and we'll have a presentation today, we've had some serious challenges with transportation, and we're going to be rolling out a plan after getting feedback from our families and listening to our families and making adjustments so that we roll out a 4-bell schedule that will allow us to have much more efficiency in transporting our scholars. Right now, on average, 200 to 300 scholars a day are impacted because they're getting to school late or we're not able to really complete our routes on a timely fashion. And so the move to a 4-bell schedule, as you'll learn, this is what a lot of districts around the region are doing. Kent has 12-bell schedules, Renton has 6. So a lot of our districts are moving in this direction so they can cover when you have increased ridership. And so I look forward to hearing more from our team as they do that presentation. That's all that I have for right now.
Thank you. Next are school board comments. Director Gregory, would you like to start us this evening?
Thank you. First of all, I think Betty left, but I wanted to comment on her effort to support often the least among us in the community. I think that's a very powerful thing she's doing, and those individual initiatives are what really bring together a community and help us meet a lot of the needs of our own constituents, especially our children. The other thing I would say is that we have been participating in the board recognition nights, and they have been very successful this year. Superintendent Campbell and her team reorganized those in a way that I think really clarifies how our strategic plan is being supported through the learning of our students, and that's really a very exciting thing to watch. Kids are excited, parents are excited, and we get done in an hour, so it's well worth coming to. And the final thing I will say that I am thinking a lot about, and that is the whole question of food for our students. I have been to several events or activities or read things that keep talking about the fact that when students don't have food, students have a hard time learning. And it seems so simple, but we have not solved it. And this is something that I want to focus on this next year. How do we ensure that no matter what, all of our children have the ability to get food at school whenever they need it? And I don't care if they've got food at home, but if they're hungry at school, that needs to be available. But most importantly, for our students who come to school not well fed, and that's no fault of anyone's except our society right now is not meeting the needs of all of our students, and we have to help with that. So that's something, and if anybody has ideas on how to pursue a smart way to do that in our schools, I'd love to hear it. Thank you.
I just want to add, we actually talked about this in cabinet, and we were coming up with a strategy to have like a basket, that sort of what we saw at NSBA, along with partnering with the bag. And so we'll be sharing a presentation with the board in August or September, because I have talked to several of you who've talked about this, and our cabinet has come up with some ideas. We spent some time doing this about 2 weeks ago.
And just one other comment around that too is that what Rotary's doing, right? So Rotary has gotten $59,000 for the bag program that will impact 12 schools in our district next year, which is great. We're donating money to it. To add to it too. That's great. Thank you. Vice President Wilson?
I'll say when we traveled abroad, the food baskets were in every single classroom. There was fresh fruits, there was crackers, and there was water available, as well as boxed juices. Every single classroom, and every morning the kids replenished them, and they were there for kids to have in every single classroom at every single grade. So I think it's worthy of considering. And once our gardens, during the summer, when our gardens, and our spring, when the gardens in our community are full, it's another way to think about how we might, again, connect our families to our garden projects, because I think often families don't understand that there's sweat equity there, and there's an opportunity to work in the gardens and also reap the gardens and also glean. So I think there's lots that we could be doing. I wanted to welcome the new federal way staff. It's always an exciting time of year when appointments are made and people are new or people are moving to new places. And so I want to thank Cassie for the great introduction for all of them. I want to also thank Betty for her work in that the Sahali Project is student initiated, so she's there, but they've been collecting early in the morning at breakfast and during their lunchtime as a club opportunity. And so I think that that's awesome because our youth are really interested in taking care of their own. I had an opportunity to go to Mirror Lake to read to me, and I got to pick an awesome book and read to 2 second grade classes, which always makes your day, especially when the book is good and the kids like it too. And I also brain danced with a 3rd grade class that was doing a break between math and between their reading. So was awesome. I also have attended the school board recognitions, which are always a wonderful event, and especially I think for our young scholars who often are not seen for the progress they've made or for what they're doing. And so to be able to have families be so proud to have them be there is wonderful. Had the opportunity, the superintendent visits this last week we did, Director Gregory and I had a chance to go visit the early learning programs, which are a great interest of mine, and so we visited the Head Start Truman site, which is a little bit different than visiting a middle school or a high school, and what you see or what you don't see, and how classes are set up, and how children interact, and how they learn through doing and through being as opposed to being taught. So I really appreciated the time there. Had a chance also last week to attend the Resilience movie that was put on by the Equity Department, and it was a wonderful, wonderful chance to sit with community members and to talk a little bit about things that impact every single one of us and our adverse childhood experiences, and had a wonderful young woman by the name of Angela Gardner, who was the poet laureate from Seattle, who came and was able to do 2 pieces of her poetry, and then spent time afterwards during the debrief for mentors that were there, but also staff who were there getting clock hours and really having some opportunity to go a little bit deeper into the movie and to hear from her about her experiences. And it was an exciting thing for me because ACES, although it seems like it's been around forever, is really quite new, and we've always known there's things around social and emotional issues, but we've never been able to really pinpoint why that is. And that movie really focused and highlighted the beginning of the movement here in the state of Washington, and it was great because I was sitting in the audience in Wenatchee where the movie was, and as a participant was able to be one of those that took the ACES test, and to be able to understand that we as adults are working with youth and we are impacted by it as well, I think is really important. So I appreciated the learning and the time to talk. Was able to go to the Korean consulate luncheon. Dr. Campbell shared words there, and that was really nice to celebrate our ongoing relationship. Yeah, Director Drake and I were both there. Yeah. No, we were at, we were not at the fundraiser. She's like, you were there? No, we were at the luncheon where the consulate, the Korean consulate folks were here, and we were celebrating the relationship between Federal Way and the Korean community. There's a lot of things going on. And then I just wanted to say I was spent time at the Federal Way Coalition Against Trafficking. They had their 5K run, Break the Chains, this weekend, and Decatur Gator Drumline was there helping root people as they started off on the 5K and as they ended the 5K, but we had a large number of young people that are involved in that, and I know many of them doing their work for Free the Children and We Day have chosen Federal Way Coalition as one of those efforts, but it was also a wonderful opportunity as a community to get together, and during that time found out that City Vision is rebranding and they're renaming themselves Federal Way Community Connections. And on June 6th, they're going to be doing a celebration at our own transportation center between 3 and 7 to really call all nonprofits and all service organizations in our community together to really think about and rebrand kind of what City Vision is, and that's where service providers get together and talk a little bit about how we can work together better on behalf of our community citizens. And so I think it's something that we've been connected with in some ways, but it'll give us an opportunity to re-engage. That's it.
Thank you. Director Eto?
Thank you. We're almost done with all the board recognition ceremonies, and we see so many that are doing great things in these schools and doing things even nationally. And what occurs to me, even when we have these presentations here, the good news announcements, is that when I go through a lot of our receipts, and this is just ignorance on my part, I can't understand why certain groups are funded to go and others have to make up their own money, robotics and others. So I think it'd be good if the board understood what the parameters were for it has to come out of the ASB funds, or it could be coming out of board money, or it could be coming out, because some of these chances to go to a state or national competition are one in a blue moon, and so it would be nice because I think we all recognize that these kids are engaged, and it's a way to engage students. Not only through athletics, they get to go to their championships, but robotics championships, any kind of thing like that. It just strikes me as odd that I have to get emails saying, you know, go to a pancake breakfast because we got to go to a national championship thing that the school won't fund. So somewhere we have to, I think, get some clarity on why can't we fund these folks for these great activities.
I want to just add a little bit to that. So there are certainly ASB funds at the schools, and there's a variety of fundraisers, but we also don't have one set of activities per school. Each school, that variation is there. So for example, robotics at TJ, I funded some of that right out of the superintendent's office, the debate club. Decatur's had a need for instruments. A lot of times they reach out to the superintendent's office, and so we've made funds available to help schools when they don't have those funds. But it is a variety of funding, but we certainly can provide you some guidelines around it. But because there's an autonomous nature of that for each school, it's hard to sort of pin it down and say all of it will be funded this way. But we're working very hard right now to close that access gap, Director Edo, and I'd be excited to have our team come and present some information to you later this summer or early fall.
That's great to hear. Thank you.
Yep.
Director Drake.
I too wanted to talk about the school board recognition because it's such an amazing time. And having been part of it for quite a few years, both as principal and now director, I can honestly say the quality has changed this year. And it's because of the strategic plan, and it's because of the way in which there is a focus and a consistent focus that really looks at the goals that each of the schools are trying to focus on. And because there's this laser focus, we're seeing the progress. And it's so exciting when we were awarding recognition to a scholar because they had achieved 2 years reading growth in 1 year. And the whole room erupts. And exactly what Director Gregory is saying, it's really one of the major reasons why it's quite nice being a school board director. It's really very, very worthwhile. So that's that. And then I just, every 3 months we've been meeting with 3 city councillors. Lydia Sefer-Dawson couldn't be there last week, but we had Mark Kopang and Jean Burbidge. And there really is a sense of momentum. There are a growing number of ways that the school district and the city council are merging and beginning to work together. And there is that sense of collaboration. And without a great school district, there will never be a great city. And that recognition is really beginning to grow. Would you agree, Director Gregory, from the meeting that we had? It was really good. And I'm not going to go on any more other than to say that the bond, Councillor Kopang is going to be attending the meetings in the future. And now I've said it on TV, he's got to. And once the board has approved the bond measure, they will present before the city council a resolution. So I feel there are some tangible ways in which we're working together, which excites me. Also, the Korean luncheon was exciting. and hearing your presentation, and just the way in which the Korean community feels so positive about Federal Way. It is so nice to hear people extolling the virtues of Federal Way. It really does wonders to the heart. That's it.
Thank you. So 2 school visits this last 2 weeks, Todd Beamer and Kylo Middle School. I appreciate Dr. Campbell's work to continue to help us see that, and it is pretty amazing based on the strategic plan and the work we've done as a board to understand what education should look like when you walk into a room and to see where there are gaps and where there are things that are thriving. And so it's nice to have that. 17 scholars from Federal Way will be recognized on Thursday by the Rotary Club and receiving scholarships from the Rotary, and so we'll be attending that. Board recognition, you've heard it from all 5 of us. I just want to point out that the alignment to the strategic plan and what we're doing, we purchased a brand new English language arts last year, K-8, and we are seeing the fruits of that. The highest recognition has been over 3 years growth around this program with ERLA and the work that's being done in our elementaries. And to have the opportunity at school board recognition to recognize that, and as Director Drake talked about, it's just everybody erupts. It's amazing that the support and the scholar to be able to glean that support from the community is just phenomenal. And my last piece to share is that I'm honored to be unopposed to run for my next 4 years, so I'll be serving an additional 4 years on this board. I do not have an opponent for the next 4 years, so Director Gregg and I will both be seated for the next 4 years, and that means that the board will stay solid for the next 2 years with no change, so we continue to focus on our scholars. Thank you.
One thing I forgot that I probably ought to cover tonight, or I'll forget for the next one too, and that is that I attended the exit interview of our audit. And again, this year, Federal Way was viewed glowingly by the auditors. There were no major issues that they raised. There are a couple very minor things, but they're not really our issues. They're state regulations that all school districts are having a struggle with. But as far as the work that we're doing here and protecting and using the monies wisely that that the state, the federal government, and our own community provides, we were given accolades, and Sally and her staff are to be commended, because year after year this happens in Federal Way, and that's really great. Because we're doing a lot of things differently, but we're still doing them well and financially as well. So I just wanted to thank everyone for that work and to announce that that was the result of the interview.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is Executive Limitations 1, Human Capital Report Presentation. Dr. Campbell?
I'd like to invite David Brower, Chief Performance Management Officer, up to present this report. As he comes up, I want to say, when you think about our $300 million plus budget, 85% of that is people. Well, an organization that doesn't have clear values, rigorous processes for identifying, onboarding, training, and then providing a vision and action for those people is lost. And what David will be sharing with you are our processes and human resources for selecting, hiring, retaining, evaluating, and maintaining a highly skilled workforce that's focused, Director Drake, on those very goals that we see and celebrate at our board recognition nights.
Thank you. Good evening, President McAnalloy, members of the Board of Directors, and Superintendent Dr. Tammy Campbell. On behalf of the Human Resources team, I'm here to present information and evidence of compliance on all 5 subsections of Executive Limitation 1. I'll be outlining the interpretation of the 5 components of this executive limitation, and I'll be highlighting practices that serve as evidence of compliance. I won't be reading each piece of evidence, but I will be highlighting a few key indicators. I am pleased to convey that we are in compliance with Executive Limitation 1 and all 5 subcomponents. These this executive limitation is really about having human capital or human resource procedures that ensure that the board priorities and the strategic plan are supported, implemented, and fulfilled. As always, our work is rooted in and guided by the strategic plan. We recognize that the role of human resources is to create and preserve the district's assets, specifically the human capital, so that every scholar has the benefit of trained and effective staff, supporting all 5 goals of the strategic plan and deeply rooted in Pillar 3 about retaining and attracting the best people. These are the 5 subcomponents that I will be discussing tonight. And I will go through them one at a time, and we'll begin with Executive Limitation 1A, which is that the district must have in place policies, procedures, and processes to protect the district from unlawful or unethical behaviors by its employees. And allow me to highlight 2 of the pieces of evidence of compliance. I'd like to start with that top bullet, which is around our procedures and policies. We consistently and continuously review and update our policies to make sure that they are current, in line with the law, as well as with our current practices and our strategic plan. Along with that, we discuss and those in cabinet and leadership and make sure that all of our administrators are trained so that that information can be shared, the understanding shared, and those policies can be enforced. Also like to highlight the last bullet up there, that we have worked very hard on improving our investigation procedures. We really view investigations as an opportunity to help people learn and grow. And in order to do that, we need to be timely and responsive, because if allegations come in and they just sit there for weeks and weeks and weeks, the opportunity is lost often. And so we have implemented procedures, created an investigation toolkit, worked at training all administrators so that we have been able to drastically reduce our response time. Our response time is now less than 2 weeks for most allegations and investigations. And that's one thing that, as we have worked with one of our bargaining units specifically, they just appreciated. Because they said, you know what, no longer are we just waiting and waiting. We can find out what's going on, change practice, and move forward. So last year, there were many instances where it was taking several weeks, if not months. We outsourced many of our investigations. With reorganizing the central office and specifically human resources, we've been able to be much more responsive, and so we've reduced that from 2 months in some cases down to 2 weeks in most cases. Looking at Executive Limitation 1B, this is about making sure that the district is going to function if Dr. Campbell is not available. And I'd like to highlight a couple of things that I think are really important here. First, we have a protocol that's established for identifying the designee whenever she is not available. Most often that is Deputy Superintendent Dr. Danny Pfeiffer, but there are others that have been identified and have served in that role when both of them are not available. But the other part of that I'd like to highlight is it's not just about making sure we have a protocol there for who's going to take over if she's not available, but making sure that everybody in cabinet and leadership is trained and aware of what's going on in the district, deeply rooted in the strategic plan, really working on the goals of equity, and consistently pursuing our learning of strategic and systemic thinking so that as a group, we are better empowered to lead the schools and scholars with whom we work. One of the key functions of human resource department is making sure that we have effective, caring, culturally competent staff working with every scholar. And so we have worked diligently to do that. This is really about retaining and attracting and supporting the best people. As you're aware, we have implemented as a district equity training for all staff, classified and certificated, to promote cultural competence. This has been really critical in our work, and especially appreciated by many of our classified staff who often have not gotten this type of training. I'd also like to highlight up there the third bullet, that we have developed a comprehensive evaluation process for all certificated and classified staff. This has been a lot of work, but this really goes to viewing evaluation as growth and not just judgment. And in order for that to happen, everybody needs to be evaluated, everybody needs to have goal setting, everybody needs to receive feedback, and everybody needs to have feedback along the way, so it's not just an end of the year surprise, and for all groups.
I just want to add a point. Tomorrow we're going to be at a training about racial equity policy. I believe Federal Way Public Schools next year is in position now to really have an authentic policy that would be known by everybody because of the training that we've done versus doing the policy and then the training follow. We would have this policy owned across all of our schools with our equity teams, and I'm excited about the racial equity policy work that will happen next year as a result of us really taking our time and doing our training first.
Thank you. The last item I'd like to highlight on this slide is about the maintaining legally and defensible hiring practices and processes. This isn't just about dotting the I's and crossing the T's, but really making sure that we have a consistent process across all hiring committees to make sure that every candidate that has applied has a fair shot, that we're not just hiring the person that we know, but really making sure that we review each of those applications with a thorough lens and with a lens for equity. The other element of this executive limitation is about making progress towards a diverse staff that reflects our scholars. So in these next few slides, I'd like to look at what we've done and where we need to go. This slide shows the 3-year trend in racial diversity of our building and central administrative staff. So you see that we've had some fluctuations there. As we look at the next slide, you see that we have made some incremental progress with the racial diversity of our certificated staff. And then as you look at our classified staff, we have made some fairly significant progress in the racial diversity of this group. And just for emphasis, I'd like to read this part. While far from acceptable levels, Federal Way School District does have a higher average number of teachers in all non-white subgroups, with the exception of the American Indian and Alaskan Native when compared to Washington State averages. And I'd like to highlight specifically these two areas where our averages are significantly better than the state. But we still have work to do as we have a student body that, or a staff rather, that reflects our student body. To that end, I apologize. Get ahead of myself here. In order to create a diverse staff, we have begun a Grow Your Own initiative in partnership with a Grow Your Own Diverse Staff grant. What this does is allows us to focus on hiring people from within, training our students who are in our teacher academy classes at each of our 4 high schools, as well as to connecting our current classified staff with opportunities to go and get their teacher training and teacher certificate. So we're really excited about the work that we're doing in this area. Part of retaining and attracting any staff is making sure that we have a competitive compensation structure. We use those districts listed there as a comparable group. These are selected based on their location and close to our size. And this is ones that we've agreed on and used for every bargaining group. Last year, we completed 5 bargains, and we were able to maintain or exceed market midpoint when compared to these groups. We have 2 groups that are currently bargaining, and we continue to use that as a baseline. I alluded to this earlier, but I want to talk a little bit more about 1E, which is around staff evaluations. This has been a priority focus for us this year. We've been working with various certificated and classified groups this year to implement a quality evaluation tool for all employees. that gives all employees the benefit of goal setting, feedback, and formative assessment. As part of this, each evaluator gets a list at the beginning of the year of all the people they need to evaluate and which tool and which group they're a part of. Then we use that list to verify that all have been evaluated. And that's how we know that we can stand and say we're in compliance with this executive limitation. That concludes our presentation. As I said, this evidence does indicate that we are in compliance with this executive limitation, and I would welcome any questions at this time.
Questions, board members?
I just appreciate the information. I also appreciate the conversation around pathways. I think with a diverse community like we have, to figure out how we can help our classified staff move into potentially certificated positions or others, as well as thinking about how we offer opportunities to families to move into those classified positions. They would also bring language diversity and some real cultural awareness to our program. So I'm glad to see that, and I appreciate the information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Gregory.
I worked in a program, we created a program to bring parents or community members who had certificates or degrees from other countries into the work, and we actually have one of those people in that class that's at Federal Way High School. So there is some learning that's already taken place that would be good to add to that group, so that, because we found some pitfalls that everybody's going to face, but we didn't realize it at the beginning.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you.
This time it entertains a motion for executive limitations 1.
I move that the Board of Education approve that EL1, Human Resources, is in compliance.
A motion, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is bell schedule update. Dr. Campbell?
So one of the things we know, and one of the most important things we do, is transport our scholars to school every day in an on-time fashion and a safe fashion. That's really core to starting the day off right for 8,000 of our scholars that are part of the ridership on our buses. And so as we are growing as a district, but also as we're struggling with shortages in terms of our actual drivers, we've been grappling like other districts in the region. And with that in mind, I have asked Dr. Pfeiffer, Sally McLean, and Michelle Turner, the Director of Transportation, to provide the board and the community at large with a bigger picture of what the challenges are for us as a school district and our plan going forward to address some of those challenges related to transportation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell. Board President McAnally, members of the board, Dr. Campbell. It's our pleasure this evening to present to you information related to Federal Way Public Schools' return to the 4-bell schedule. Joining me this evening is our Chief Finance and Operations Officer, Sally McLean, and to my right here is our Director of Transportation, Michelle Turner. The purpose of this evening's presentation is to share the process that informed the decision to return to the 4-bell schedule,
to share the rationale for returning to the 4-bell time schedule,
share the benefits of the 4-bell schedule,
share the highlights of the concerns from our families,
and then finally share the supports and the communication timeline. Ultimately, the decision to return to the 4-bell time schedule was driven by a critically important work of educating each and every one of our scholars, and particularly advancing the goals within our strategic plan. More specifically, this return helps to support the Whole Child Goal 2, with on-time arrivals for our scholars to start their day positively, supports Goal 3 with our ability to provide extracurricular activity, transportation, and extended learning opportunities across the district in an equitable fashion. And finally, Goal 4, when scholars arrive on time, they're able to more fully engage in and participate in high levels of learning, reaching competency in content area subjects. We have on average 8,000 scholars that ride the bus each day. And of those 8,000 riders, on average, 420 of our scholars are impacted daily as a result of uncovered routes and late buses. This data is given to you to provide context for the rationale for the return to the 4-bell schedule.
population growth in Federal Way has increased, and what we're noticing is it's at 1% a year of riderships on our buses. We're late 2 to 3 times a week, and we're running about 20 minutes late, which is impacting the goal 2 being in the classroom on time for our scholars, and it's also impacting the breakfast. Our McKinney-Vento scholars are being transported mostly by cabs, which is resulting in a financial impact for the district of about $500,000. Our buses are overcrowded. We currently have 60 to 70 scholars on any bus. We also have our big transits at a couple of our elementaries in which we're transporting 80 scholars at those schools, which is also causing a safety concern. Our field trips, we're unable to offer proper transportation, effective and efficient. Most of our trips, we're requiring that they start later and that they return early, so they're not there at the full time that they're wanting to be. And that's to ensure that all of our routes are covered in the afternoons. Charter buses, we're contracted with 3 different charter companies to help ensure that we have transportation coverage, which is also causing an unnecessary financial impact to the district.
So while obviously supporting Goal 2 is our most important initiative here in ensuring we are able to transport our students on time, as you have heard from Michelle Turner, we are having some cost implications, and the spreadsheet snips you see here can show you that in 2014-15, we were able to transport most all of our student needs in-house, and so we had costs outside of the district of about $130,000. You can see in 2015-16 that tripled to a little less than $400,000, and this year we're year to date sitting at right below $700,000, and that number is expected to grow. So those financial impacts, in addition to the impacts on our scholars, are prompted us to start looking at returning to the 4-bell schedule.
The bus driver shortage is more than regional, it's actually national. Currently, I have 112 drivers on daily routes, 6 substitutes with an average of 10 drivers absent each day, which is resulting in uncovered routes. 50% of the office staff as well as the mechanics are out driving routes on any given day. The impact that we're seeing is our inability to respond to any arising situations, backlog on regular daily routes and daily office duties, behind in fleet maintenance, increase in overtime. After reviewing current data, it was determined that we needed to go to another bell time in order to transport our scholars. It was determined, and that was also presented to the cabinet. The information was also analyzed with the bell times, which you will see on the next slide. From that information, a subcommittee was created and presented to the principals.
Okay, I think it was, all right. Well, I know, we are sharing, but you were, okay. As we went through this multi-step process, principals were given opportunities to provide feedback on 2 occasions as you walk through this arrow from right to left. The first rollout of revised bell schedules prompted some questions and feedback. We made refinements back based on that feedback and represented new proposal to principals, took that final proposal to cabinet, and then rolled forward with an implementation plan. And that is why we're here this evening.
I think the most important thing here, it really does outline the process, that there was data derived and analyzed, that it went through a reiterative process where we were gaining feedback and making those refinements to inform the necessary return to the 4-bell schedule.
I just want to put one of the questions that were asked, why didn't we roll this out and ask the community what the solution should be? And what I will tell you is we often seek community input, but one of the things that I think your integrity requires you to do, when you know you have only one solution, you don't ask because there's no other options, and because of our limited options, this was what we did. But what we did do to be responsive to community feedback, once we rolled that information out and they gave us suggestions to tweak, we made tweaks based on community feedback. So I just want to put that out there as well.
We looked at districts comparable to our size, and what we found was Kent had the most bell times. However, Highline and Auburn comes in second with 11, Puyallup, and then Renton and Issaquah. Moving forward to the 4-bell schedule, the advantages, some of the advantages will be, we'll be able to reduce the amount of scholars that we're currently transporting on our buses, which will increase ridership safety and eliminate most mixed group buses.
What does that mean, mixed group buses, for people that are listening?
We have combo routes, Sacagawea and Nautilus, elementary, middle school together, combined together.
Thank you.
We'll have fewer late buses. We'll run on time and more on time. Our field trips, we will be able to extend those to full day and eliminate the need and cost for charters. Moving to the 4-bell would also allow Federal Way Public School bus fleet to cover our own afternoon routes as well as our in-district field trips instead of the expense of charter buses. It will be shorter wait times at the bus stop. That will also help with the concerns of the behavior issues that we're receiving complaints on. The 4-bell will also allow the bus drivers to have at least a 20-hour week, which makes Federal Way Public School a more desirable place to work as a bus driver.
Some of the other considerations that were made prior to returning to the 4-bell time is that we needed to ensure that Nautilus K-8 as well as Woodmont K-8 participate in Sacagawea athletics, giving them those extracurricular activities. And that decision was made based on regional transports and where the buses are routed. We're working right now, our athletic director, Jerry Peterson, is reaching out and adjusting the start times of both the games as well as the practice, and has been working with the coaches on site there to make certain that that accommodation is made. And then, as you know, the TAF at Sahali, there are high school students that exist in the TAF at Sahali program, and they need the ability to participate in high school athletics at Decatur High School as well as clubs and activities. We needed to provide that for them.
So just to clarify, that means that Sacagawea will not be a part of the middle school schedule, will be a part of the Woodmont, which is elementary, and TAF will be a part of the high school scheduling, just to be clear about what the implications are of that.
And Dr. Campbell just queued us up very nicely for our next slide here, and Sally's going to go ahead and just kind of explain to you our bell schedule.
I know this is a very busy slide, and so what we attempted to do, though, was summarize the changes between the 16-17 bell times and the 17-18 bell times as they were proposed prior to modification from community input. As Dr. Campbell was referencing just a couple minutes ago. So you can see that for our 4 comprehensive high schools that the current start times were 7:25 or 7:30. And for 17-18, we proposed standardizing all 4 of the comprehensive high schools with a 7:35 start time. And as you heard, that also includes TAF at Sahali for the 17-18 school year. And then the last column is just reflective of the time change for the students and staff in those particular bands. So for high schools, that would mean staff and students would start 5 to 10 minutes later, depending on whether or not they had a 7:25 or 7:30 start. And for the program, the Taft-Sahali relocation, where previously they were starting at 8 o'clock, they would be aligned with that 7:35 start. So I'm not going to read each one of those to you, but just so that you had an opportunity to read that table and understand what that is trying to show to you. And of course, if you drop all the way to the bottom with the late elementary schools, currently most all elementary schools start at 8:50. 9 of those were moved into that fourth bell time, the return to the fourth bell time, with a proposed start of 9:20. And again, for the sake of transparency, the schools that were identified there were Panther Lake, Lake Grove, Enterprise, Valhalla, Olympic View, Green Gables, Meredith Hill, Sunnycrest, Rainier View, and Lake Duluth.
But this is all changed, right?
Yes,
So
and
it's-
I will
want-
explain that here in just a moment. So while we provided the rationale to our families during our first initial communication, very much like what Michelle just explained to you, the reason that we were returning to the Fordell, we received some concerns from our families that can be captured in basically these 4 main themes. The large majority of concerns came from families who were affected by the later start elementary times. Some expressed concerns related to morning childcare as they prepared for work. Some expressed concerns related to their students' participation in after-school activities and the inability to get them there in a timely fashion, or cutting into family time, being able to have a limited time relative to dinner. Also walking in darker afternoons as we moved into our winter months, and then the consideration related to feeder pattern alignment and families having multiple students at multiple levels. And so, really, in an effort to be responsive to our families and the concerns they voice under the leadership of Dr. Campbell, we have further analyzed our data and are able to share with you some immediate adjustments that have been made in response to these concerns. So first, we will be adjusting the start times by 10 minutes starting earlier, allowing for an earlier release time in our late start elementary schools, moving from 3:50 p.m. to 3:50 p.m. to 3:40 p.m. And for many, what they were asking for is simply 10 minutes. And so after the analysis, we were able to accommodate that. And you can see that comparison here on the chart to the right. I'd like to draw your attention to the last line on this table, and that illustrates this. We will also be offering morning extended learning opportunities for our late start elementaries, supporting our families that expressed concerns as they were getting ready for work with childcare. We have put out a survey to families asking if they would take advantage of the services if offered, getting their voice and being able to quantify that number. Our district athletic director has begun to reach out to our community athletic and activity organizations, sharing our bell time adjustments and asking if they would be willing to make slight accommodations and adjustments relative to practice or games. And we will be engaging in a comprehensive performance audit of the transportation department to help identify areas of strength and areas of challenge that will inform systems improvement to better serve our families and our scholars. And we'll be reaching out to actively recruit bus drivers, as always, to build our drivers' workforce. And I'm happy to say just this last weekend we received 7 interested people that are currently being screened. So we will continue to make those efforts. And we'll be reaching out to our daycares to inform them of the change in our bell times, as well as continuing to communicate and listen to our families relative to this change. So that ends our presentation this evening.
Any questions, directors? Dr. Gregory?
Going to 20 hours a week, what impact do you anticipate that's going to have? And also, what's the average in our area? And that's number 2. And number 3, what's the ideal?
For workload?
Yeah. What would encourage, how many hours would someone need to really want to be a bus driver if 20 hours isn't working?
If 20 hours isn't working, 20 hours, it allows them to be able to get benefits.
Okay,
And benefits right now is what's really important to a lot of
right.
families.
And is that about the work time for bus drivers throughout the region?
Yes, they have a split shift morning and afternoons, and the basic is about 2 hours.
So you'll be looking at other alternative schedules and so forth to encourage, what's the term I want? Encourage us to keep our bus drivers.
We've got a comprehensive
Retain.
plan around paying for tests to get them to recruit. She's presented a comprehensive plan that's beyond just the hours.
Great.
That we're doing. So I think that together, and she called other districts to find out what they were doing.
Yes.
And
Yes, I
so those are some of the things that Michelle, under Michelle's leadership, that we'll be doing for the upcoming school year.
Great, thank you.
I also know it's a tough one when you bid on seniority, so when you're a brand-new driver, you don't get the best routes and you don't get the best hours, and I know also that's pretty difficult, so being able to provide more routes hopefully will provide more opportunity and more hours for drivers.
Yes.
Because I also know districts don't share drivers, and so if you can only get 5 hours here, it doesn't mean you can pick 10 hours up somewhere else. So I think everything that we can do to provide that kind of hours with the benefits is going to keep drivers here. So I really appreciate that information. And I also appreciate the responsiveness. And, anytime you create a system, it's just like a policy. You can't create a policy for my kiddo. You create it for the 23,000 students in Federal Way Public Schools. And then there are always those that are negatively impacted or differently impacted. And so it isn't that you ignore that, but you can't create a policy for an individual. And I think the same thing is happening as we think about our bell schedule, that nobody wants to put any single person or any family in a position where they're suddenly struggling with the challenge of what they're going to do next year. But we also know we have to create a system that works for the 23,000 scholars and for those 8,000 or so that we transport. So what I appreciate is the responsiveness and the willingness to look out to our community and see how, with those late start schools and with those places where we do have those challenges, that we understand that. And given the fact that we know the diversity of our population and the struggles that our families have, I think it just does us such a good thing to be able to address that and to meet the needs, and also create an opportunity for people to meet their neighbors and perhaps figure out how they might work together when we have system changes like this. So thank you so much for the information. I know it's not a simple task at all.
Director Drake.
Go ahead.
I'm sort of intrigued by the Highline having 11 bell schedules. I'm trying to get my head around what time do they start, what time do they finish? Don't worry if you haven't got it.
Okay.
I can provide context as a former principal in Kent School District where we
Okay.
had 14 bell times.
Yeah.
And so each year, regardless of the position, the school that I was in, we would communicate to our community that while we start at 8:20 this year, next year, based on the needs of our bus drivers, if we have missing bus drivers, uncovered routes, that might indeed change. And they found that with the greater number of bus times, they were able to accommodate more coverage in bus routes.
I think it's really valuable information to know that, we may think we're going from 3 to 4, isn't this horrendous? But, and the other, how comparable, how competitive are we salary-wise for bus drivers?
Sally could probably answer that question. And as Sally's coming to the podium, I think the other ingredient in terms of what 14 is to 4, it probably has to do with the number of routes, the number of drivers, the number of buses.
Yeah.
I think those are variables that could change it, and that don't make it a straight comparison, would be what I would guess.
Right, and so the consistent practice in Federal Way has always been to look at our market comps for the 7 districts that we have been comparing compensation to for a very long time, and that is also true within our public school employees collective bargaining agreement. And so with the contract that was agreed to by PSE and the district, those market comps are in place for our bus drivers. And typically we find that they are fairly competitive for that market midpoint.
Okay.
They don't lag as far as some other groups.
Director Gregory?
Just one other thing. I would hope that in our study that maybe we could expand it to think about how student need drives that as our highest priority, staff need drives that as our second priority, so that even though we may not be able to accomplish the ideal, if we could think about that now, we can drive towards it. That's clever, drive towards it. But what I'm thinking about is we know that there's a lot of research now on when it's best for, when students learn the best, and while until McCleary and a few other things, we're never going to really be able to think about that in a realistic way as far as a bus schedule. If that's in the back of our mind and always driving us, I think that's a really valuable thing, and then this is a great opportunity to start, it seems to me.
You bring up a great point, because what we said when we first started the conversation is like, how do we get those high schoolers to school just a little bit later? But guess what that did? It pushed the elementaries to late. And I think when you have more buses and more bus drivers, you're absolutely right, because we know research says getting up that early in the morning for those adolescent high schoolers is not good. I've got a parent who's called me today about it, and we agree with that. That's not the ideal. So I appreciate the push. Director Gregory, you're absolutely right.
Well, what's really positive about this that we should take away, though, is the fact that we're reducing the opportunities for bullying on these buses because the age groups aren't that wide apart anymore. We're getting away from self-inflicted tardies, basically,
Yes.
if we're not getting our kids to school.
Goal 2.
And it's more cost-effective use of our resources, so that's great. And if the bus drivers are getting benefits, that's a great win. So that's great to hear.
Nice capture. Thank you, Director.
So thank you for your time, but I'm going to reiterate what Dr. Campbell said, and that I believe as we look at research and we look at what's happening in our region, we have high schoolers that are starting later. And so 30% of our students are having a first bell at 7:20. And so I really would hope that over the next couple of years that we begin to look at what differences we can make and what impacts we can have. I've done 4 school visits to high schools, and every one of those visits, there's a scholar with his head down on his desk asleep. So those first periods, starting at 7:20, are impacting our goals, our strategic plan, the whole child piece. So I'm the naysayer out of this, but at some point, we have to begin to look at that. And I understand we don't have any other choice right now, but we must begin to take and put student scholar center focused at the center of this and make some changes over the next couple of years to make sure that we're providing for all. The impacts that are happening, it's to me, a direct conflict with our strategic plan to have 7,000 or 8,000 of our students have to be to school at 7:20. And based on what we have right now, there's nothing else we can do. But I'm asking as a board member that we begin to look at that and bring it back to the board and what we can do with the research that clearly states that this has to be different. So, thank you. All right, our next item is summer school and summer bridge update. Dr. Campbell.
So one of the things that we know is that we need to be continually thinking about, I was just reading, well, I probably shouldn't share this. I was told not to forward it in the email, but it was from Superintendent Reichdahl, and they're looking at OSPI, year-round schooling, extended day. We need to be thinking about the summer in terms of how do we provide rigorous learning experiences that really innovate and motivate and push scholars. I always hated it when, I was summer school principal back in Central Valley, where you were working with scholars who struggled and they were doing more of the same thing that they've been doing during the regular school year. And what we're excited about is sharing what we would call acceleration, innovation, exciting opportunities for scholars that really get them on fire. And so with that, I'm going to hand this off to James Crawford, our Chief Academic Officer, and the team to share the opportunities that we have for our scholars K-12.
Thank you. Good evening, Board President McAnally, Board of Directors, Superintendent Dr. Campbell. We're excited to be offering summer enrichment opportunities at all levels, elementary, middle, and high school this summer. We'd like to share the outline of the 5 programs that Teaching for Learning is supporting this summer for our scholars. With me presenting tonight are Julie Ray, Learning Improvement Officer, Jane Miller, Director of Instructional Technology, and Sean Simpson, Coordinator of Secondary Instruction, all of whom have been collaborators in the development of our summer programs. The purpose of tonight's presentation, like Dr. Campbell mentioned, is to provide an overview of the summer programs being offered to support our schools' learning experiences and transitions between grade levels. Our summer learning programs are aligned and in direct support of Goal 3, Engaged, Empowered, Critical Thinkers, and Goal 5, High School Graduation through Successful Transitions. Within Goal 3, our summer learning opportunities focus on 2 signature strategies. Goal 3 strategies are as follows. 1, empower scholars with the strategies to build self-efficacy and confidence in order to persevere with enrollment in and mastery of rigorous coursework. And 2, create and implement culturally responsive, standards-aligned, real-world relevant STEAM and STEM project problem-based learning opportunities to prepare our scholars for future careers in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and the arts. In support of Goal 3, the Teaching for Learning Department is offering 3 summer learning opportunities: Elementary Summer Learning Academy, Secondary Summer Learning Academy, and the Fred Bus. The following slides will highlight the structure and content of each of these opportunities for scholars. Our first focus is on our Elementary Summer Learning Academy, which tightly aligns to Strategic Plan Goal 3, engaging scholars in enrichment experiences that support creating engaged, empowered critical thinkers. The Elementary Summer Learning Academy will include hands-on learning through Camp Invention, independent reading, the science of gardening, and robotics through Sphero. We will be offering the Elementary Summer Learning Academy to incoming 1st through 6th graders. This is our current kindergarten through 5th grade scholars. We'll be serving 530 scholars at 4 school sites. The school sites are Camelot, Nautilus, Olympic View, and Enterprise, 1 school in each area. Summer scholars will be engaging in full hands-on learning with Camp Invention, the science of gardening, robotics with Sphero, and spending time independently reading through their early levels. Summer Learning Academy will be from June 28th through July 27th, with a 2-day break for 4th of July. Summer Learning Academy is free to all participating scholars and includes breakfast, lunch, and transportation. One rotation during the Learning Academy will be Camp Invention. Camp Invention attends to Goal 3, Active Learners, where every scholar will become engaged, empowered, and critical thinkers. Scholars will participate in the launch program this year with 4 different modules: Duct Tape Billionaire, Mission Space Makers, Have a Blast, Operation Keep Out. Each of the 4 modules has components that develop that creative and critical thinker, develops the skills of the 21st century careers requiring clear communication, collaborative thinking, working skills, and persuasive speaking. Additionally, elementary scholars will learn more about the science of gardening. All of our summer program locations at elementary were chosen because they have garden spaces. Scholars will be the gardeners who make the garden grow, from preparing the soil to designing the garden bed to helping the plants flourish. Our scholars will be engaged in every step of the process. Another extension experience that is happening in both elementary and secondary summer learning academies is Sphero. Sphero is a spherical robot that's fun, but also way more than that. Sphero engages learners in problem solving, critical thinking, and teamwork. Sphero is packed with sensors that allow their learner to track speed, distance, and acceleration. Through data collection, scholars can compile data for graphs and charts. Scholars can also design and create challenges or programs for water. The use of Sphero is only limited by one's imagination, and we are excited to bring it to both our elementary and secondary learning academies. The last extension for our Elementary Summer Learning Academy is our Independent Reading Leveling Assessment. Scholars will work on independent reading skills as identified by their classroom teachers. In addition, teachers will work side by side in one-on-one conferring sessions, inputting data that will then follow the scholar to their new ELA teacher. Scholars will have student ownership and choice over the materials that they're reading throughout the summer. The data collected will also be used to show progress the scholar has made throughout the summer. In addition to our elementary summer learning academy, we will continue to offer FRED. FRED is the big green bus and is a collaborative effort combining TFL, nutrition services, transportation, and instructional technology. FRED comes to an apartment complex and stays for about 90 minutes, in which time scholars have access to lunch, books for home, Chromebooks, and additional activities. We have 3 FRED buses, which visit 2 sites per day. Each site is chosen based on scholar need and access across the district. FRED will run from June 28th until July 27th on Mondays through Thursdays, and we're excited to have FRED back into circulation.
Good evening. Our secondary summer learning academy also tightly aligns to strategic plan goal 3, engaging scholars in enrichment experiences that support creating engaged, empowered, critical thinkers. Incoming scholars in grades 7 through 10 will explore enriching CT pathways of learning in the digital arts, forensics, Sphero, and food science. Summer Learning Academy will be available for incoming 7th and 10th graders, and while it is located at Federal Way Public High Schools, it is open to all scholars across the district. The dates are the same as the elementary summer school, June 28th through July 27th, with a 2-day break for the 4th of July holiday. Summer school is free to all participating scholars and includes breakfast, lunch, and transportation. Like elementary, our secondary scholars participating in secondary summer learning academies will have the opportunity to work with Sphero. Sphero is a spherical robot that's fun and dynamic. Sphero engages learners in problem-solving, critical thinking, and teamwork. Sphero is packed with sensors that allow the learner to track speed, distance, and acceleration. Through data collection, scholars can compile data for graphs and charts. Scholars can also design and create challenges or program Sphero for water. The use of Sphero is driven by one's imagination, providing endless possibility. Federal Way Public School is excited to bring it both to our elementary and secondary learning academies. Another component of our secondary learning academy will include hands-on learning through digital arts. This program encompasses a wide range of the arts through computer use. This includes exploration of media, design, video, and visual theory. The instructors will design the course to appeal and maximize the strengths of our scholars attending Summer Learning Academy at Federal Way High School. The next highly engaging pathway is forensics. This appeals to our scholars for the practical application of science in solving crimes. This involves processing crime scenes and examining evidence using critical thinking and communication skills. The fourth pathway of learning, food science. Food science is not only about what is healthy and good for a person, but also the science of combining and cooking foods while exploring the effects on humans, environment, and other foods. Each of the 4 areas gives scholars experience and a preview into CT pathways afforded at all of our high schools.
In support of Goal 5, we are focusing on scholars successfully transitioning between 8th and 9th grade, as well as establishing a systematic way for students needed to retrieve credits. Goal 5 signature strategies are implement with fidelity formal processes, pathways, and options for student scholars towards content and credit recovery through a variety of programs both integrated into the school day as well as extended learning opportunity formats to ensure on-time graduation. Implement a system-wide, standardized approach to vertical progression of standards-aligned, culturally responsive teaching and learning with strong emphasis at critical transition years. The goals of 9th grade Summer Bridge align to Goal 5 in our strategic plan. Persistence to graduation, high school graduation through successful transitions. Additionally, the purpose of Summer Bridge is to help high school scholars navigate the high school system, identify when they need support, and create pathways for scholar involvement with the school environment. Scholars will engage in meaningful learning opportunities such as purposeful learning, project-based learning, study skills, real-life field trips connected to college, career, and team building. This will set the stage for an ongoing system of support that will continue throughout high school between the scholars and the participating teachers. Scholars will also be introduced to the ins and outs of high school through aspects such as reading transcripts, how to plan class schedules, how to become involved in their new school. Reading for pleasure, as well as how to tackle a variety of academic literature, will also be a focus. The Scholars Day will end with a STEM enrichment component and a group community project to support other incoming 9th grade scholars. Scholars who participate can start high school with a 0.5 elective credit, so a jump start. Summer Bridge will be offered at Federal Way High School and Thomas Jefferson High School. Scholars from middle schools that feed into these high schools can be invited to attend by their principal.
In support of Goal 5, Persistence to Graduation, grades 9 through 12 scholars are provided an alternate opportunity to show their learning based on standards they previously did not pass in a course that has been marked as failed. With a focus on student-driven learning plans, the on-site facilitator and online instructor team to support student mastery and achievement. This summer, our 4 comprehensive high schools will be offering Summit credit recovery in a common format. Although scholars may attend each day and time frame, our schools provided feedback to identify the need to offer 2 sessions with an AM and PM schedule. This will accommodate scholars' work schedules and family vacations while continuing to focus on scholar success academically. The scholars offered this opportunity are identified by the school counselor or administrator following a failing grade in 1 or more of the 14 courses listed on the screen. Courses are specific to mathematics, English language arts, and history. If a scholar must recover all standards for a course or is a college-bound student athlete, they will be offered Internet Academy as their summer option.
So as a brief overview of our timeline, we're currently in the process of inviting students and hiring teachers and site coordinators. All schools have the necessary paperwork to invite and enroll scholars, and data secretaries are being trained to make this a seamless process. We anticipate scholars being registered by the end of May. We'll continue to hire teachers throughout the early June and begin mapping out bus routes for scholar transportation. Summer school teachers will receive training and time to set up their classrooms on June 26th and the 27th, and will be ready to welcome students on June 28th. We are excited about the summer learning opportunities that Federal Way Public Schools is offering our scholars and are thankful for Dr. Campbell's continued advocacy and support, ensuring enrichment opportunities are a priority during the summer months. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, board members? Director Eto?
For clarification, I'm not understanding the 530 incoming, 100 incoming, 60 it's a subset of something, so what is it? Is it people that are grade deficient or flunking, or?
There were a variety of different standards that we talked to principals about. Some of it was attendance, some of it was grades, but there were a set of standards that we walked through principals with, and then they worked with their counselors to identify those students that would be at need.
And interest, too.
And interest, yes.
So this isn't an open summer school program, it's a special thing that we're setting
We're
up
targeting.
to bring folks up to where they need to be.
Yes.
I see.
Enrichment.
Okay.
Yeah, we're targeting scholars. But it's, in the past, Hiroshi, it would have been scholars, scholars who were, and we don't think about them as failing, but were significantly behind. You'd have some of those scholars, but you'd also have scholars who may want to learn more about gardening and who are interested in robotics, who we know that this would be the kind of thing that'll get them on the right course-taking patterns. So it's a blended approach, not just one target group.
Absolutely.
And I look forward to taking the board to some of the schools to do some visits in July. Sorry, Director.
No, I was just going to say we've come so far when summer school was literally just trying to get kids to pass subjects that they'd failed. And this is very exciting. I'm looking at the 0.5 credit, which is fabulous. And I'm just wondering why we should not consider some sort of credit for the grades 7 to 10. The sessions that are the enrichment sessions. I just wonder, even students who are excelling love to garner additional credit. Have we thought of that? I know the 7th and 8th grade wouldn't be relevant. Anyway, it was just a thought.
Absolutely.
We have to actually look at the content, to ensure it's rigorous and
Yeah.
offer credit, but that's a great idea
Yeah,
for us to continue to talk about. Thank you, Director Drake.
So for me to be clear, I just want to follow up with Director Eto. So anyone who's doing the credit retrieval or is low on credits, the high school credit retrieval, that's any number.
Yes,
Because that's totally different.
That's
It's just, it's the two schedule. So we'll only serve 530 elementary and we'll only serve 100 secondary. And based on the numbers on here in our summer school. And I'd be interested in knowing as we move ahead, how many more than that are interested or express an interest, but we're not able to serve. So as we move forward, we potentially can think about how we build and how we grow that. I think traditionally, families used to be able to do summertime activities. And I don't think families in our community can afford summer activities. It's a place we could also partner with our city, but I think it limits access, I know, and we have to do that because we have to put some parameters around it, but would also like to be able to see our schools being used to throw, full fidelity during the summer and provide access. So as we move ahead, I'd love to be able to think about that.
Two of the limitations are certainly staff who will actually teach and not take the time off. And just to give you a sense of what we're investing about $800,000 to do this. This is a very high level, high quality experience for our scholars.
No doubt about that at all.
Thank you all very much.
Thank
Great
you.
work. All right, next item on the agenda is presentation of resolution 2017-04, new and modernization facilities election proposition. Dr. Campbell?
Have Sally McLean and Dr. Danny Pfeiffer share first of all an overview of what is sort of driving the facilities plan that we have. I want to thank again President McAnalloy and Directors Drake who've served on the committee and who've had some working knowledge of the day-to-day work from this committee. We've got a member of the committee in the audience. Charlie, thank you for your time and your contributions and thoughts that you have consistently sent to me related to some of the thoughts that are here. So I'm going to hand it off to our two presenters to share the plan.
Right. Good evening, Board President McAnalloy, members of the board, Dr. Campbell. It's our pleasure this evening to present to you new and modernized facilities election resolution and recommendation on behalf of Dr. Tammy Campbell. Joining me this evening is Sally McLean, our Chief Finance and Operations Officer. And before we begin our presentation, we'd like to draw your attention to the bottom left-hand portion of this slide, where our committee selected the tagline, "Our community, our schools, their future," which captures really the essence of our work related to the superintendent's recommendation for you this evening. The purpose of this evening's presentation is to present to you the superintendent's recommendation for bonds to construct new classrooms and replace and renovate aging school facilities. Always foundational to our work that we do in the district are our 5 goals of our strategic plan. And this is no different. And more specifically, we believe that high-quality facilities will support the development of learner-centered environments focused on whole students' personal, academic, social, and emotional development designed to advance the goals of our strategic plan. At the 30,000-foot level, the recommendation process was comprised of 3 steps. The formation of the Facilities Planning Committee itself with over 100 families, community members, and staff to ensure voice and input. The committee then met each month from October through March, with our final meeting just being recently in May, to develop a preliminary recommendation. And finally, we engaged in 5 community forums and other staff events to share this preliminary recommendation. The main purpose of the Facilities Committee was to develop a shared understanding related to our current reality of Federal Way Public Schools facilities, established a shared vision for our future opportunities and possibilities, so the potential that lies within school facilities planning, and most importantly, to make the recommendation to the superintendent for Phase 2 school construction and modernization of the consideration for you this evening. So in order to arrive at this recommendation, the Facilities Committee engaged in a multitude of activities. While I won't read each of these bullet points, I will highlight a few for you this evening that helped to build the shared understanding that informed the recommendation. As a committee, we needed to first establish that shared knowledge and understanding of 21st century learning environments and what that means for our scholars and the supporting school environment. We engaged in school tours throughout Federal Way Public Schools, visiting some of our newest facilities, as well as those facilities that are 40 years or older. We both learned about and analyzed student enrollment projections and building capacity, developed the guiding principles, which I'll speak to here in just a moment, and what we want a facility to offer for our scholars. We also learned about funding relative to school construction assistance program funds and overall cost, and looked at facility options, all of those to arrive at our preliminary recommendation. So the committee considered a number of factors in generating the preliminary recommendation that you see tonight, and these factors include our guiding principles, current enrollment, building capacity, building conditions, and our financing considerations. And then the committee was very interested in ensuring we could put together a recommendation that did not increase taxes and provided opportunities to address future needs. So a few moments ago, you heard me mention that the committee took the time to develop guiding principles, and these principles help to define what we want for our future facilities for our scholars. For example, we determined that one of our guiding principles was to develop a space for our communities and our parents to work and engage with the school. Another guiding principle was that our facilities have the highest quality safety and security technologies principle. Was to ensure that the facility was learner-centered, allowing for space for collaboration and project-based learning for students to create projects by themselves or with one another. Additionally, we looked at the equity of opportunity related to programming, school programming, and more specifically related to our K-8 programming, knowing that when compared to the traditional elementary and middle schools, our K-8s outperform their counterparts academically, and this is due largely to the decrease in transitions between grade levels that scholars experience, and ultimately being able to respond more readily to all academic and social needs of our scholars.
All right. As you heard Dr. Pfeiffer mention, one of the pieces of work that the Facilities Planning Committee focused on was around enrollment and capacity. And while there was many conversations, slides, graphics to talk about enrollment and capacity, this one I think provides a nice 30,000-foot overview of the history of Federal Way. And the underlying blue shaded graph in the right-hand corner is reflective of the district's overall enrollment growth from the point in time that we had that history compiled, which was 1957. And you can see the very steep curve from 1957 through 1970 when this community was absorbing that baby boom. And building, as you can see, the yellow lines, the yellow words, which I don't expect you to be able to read, but all the construction that occurred between 1960 and 1970 in order to provide learning environments for the students who came to Federal Way. And that is one of the reasons when we talk about building conditions in our aging buildings that we find ourselves in a position where we have 19 buildings that are 40 years old or older was a reflection of the baby boom and the construction boom to serve those students. And then of course you can see the echo of the baby boom, which was our last major drive to build new schools from about 1985 to 1995.
So as we analyzed the data, we ensured the committee understood 3 main points, that we have 19 buildings that are 40 years or older, that currently our elementary schools are 1,000 students over capacity, and that we have projected continued growth rate of approximately 1% a year.
One of the guiding principles that you saw on a previous slide was related to building schools that are right-sized for a growing community. And when the committee wrestled with the concept about that need for space, how do we afford space? How do we create space for 1,000 elementary students? And there's really three obvious ways to do that. One is to build brand new schools. The other is to look at empty buildings that could potentially be repurposed for elementary school sites. And the third is to look at expanding. And the recommendation this evening, that was part of the preliminary recommendation and will be part of Dr. Campbell's recommendation, is to expand our existing schools rather than to build new. And when we talk about expanding, we're talking about building facilities for our K-5 elementary schools that would house up to 600 students. And please remember that we currently have a significant number of our elementary schools that are already at 600 or above. To build middle schools that will serve up to 850 students, and to build high schools along the same lines as we just built Federal Way High School, which would provide room for up to 2,000 students. And the piece I'd like to point out with high schools is that high school spaces don't just have to serve high school students. At both Decatur and Thomas Jefferson, for example, we have early learning programs, ECAP programs in particular, that are housed on our high school sites that allow our students who are involved in child development courses to have some direct experience in those sites. And so again, that is and then in turn allows us to provide space for preschool. Because when you have elementary schools, which is the place you want to go to provide preschool, but you have 1,000 unhoused students at elementary, it's very hard to find room to add preschool spaces to our very full elementary schools. So certainly as we contemplated this recommendation, and the superintendent has rolled forward her recommendation, providing space for preschool to serve some of the, I believe the last study said we had one of the largest numbers of unserved 3- and 4-year-olds, the largest in King County and one of the largest in the state. Trying to find ways to support our early learners is important. So as we roll into the superintendent's phase 2 recommendation, which is incorporated in the resolution that you have in front of you, and just to re-emphasize those three key components, is we're really focused on our overcrowding in our elementary schools, our aging buildings, and the changing needs to provide enhanced safety on our campuses. Certainly the need for safety has changed since buildings were built 40 years ago. Now, you've heard this fact a couple of times. With more than half of our facilities being 40 years old or older, our current reality is changing. Phase 2, as part of a 4-phase plan, will not address all of those needs in a single bond issue. However, using objective criterion to assess building conditions and learning environments, resolution number 2017-04 represents phase 2 of this long-term plan. Some of the key points in the superintendent's recommendation to you, again, you've heard this a couple of times, but we do believe that this plan continues to support the overall goals of the strategic plan. It will provide 960 more spaces for elementary capacity. It expands our K-8 equity of opportunity. It will provide opportunity for preschool expansion. It will provide enhancements for all schools, which I will touch on in the next slide, and is fiscally responsible. So the superintendent's recommendation specifically includes the recommendation for these schools to expand, rebuild, or modernize. And while I know we don't typically like to read lists to you, I believe that this one is important to capture. So this recommendation for phase 2 would expand, rebuild, or modernize Thomas Jefferson High School, Totem Middle School, Illahee Middle School, Lake Grove Elementary, Mirror Lake Elementary, would rebuild Olympic View Elementary and convert it to a K-8, Star Lake Elementary, and Wildwood Elementary.
In addition, it would allow us to rebuild or modernize the Memorial Stadium stands, the locker rooms, the concession stands, and the restrooms. And it will support the conversion of the old central kitchen into a central warehouse, which is a need that we have in order to provide streamlined services to all of our schools. Now, I mentioned earlier that a successful bond passage benefits all schools, and the way, even though that list that you just saw for Phase 2 is a targeted list, the School Construction Assistance Program funding that is generated once our voters agree to this ballot proposition will allow us to use those funds to support all of our schools. It will allow us to support major maintenance needs, which include roofs, boilers, and fields, beyond what we are borrowing money to address this year. It will provide funds to address needs in aging Phase 3 buildings. So as you can imagine, when we had 20 buildings that were 40 years old or older, trying to create that Phase 2 recommendation has some buildings in Phase 3 that need some attention, and the SCAP funds will allow us to address some of those concerns in some of those buildings. It will provide security enhancements, as we've talked about, parking, pedestrian, and perimeter upgrades, along with camera and entry upgrades. And it also will be used to relocate Mark Twain Elementary as Sound Transit moves forward with the Federal Way link extension. We talked about this proposal being fiscally responsible. The resolution you have in front of you is a $450 million ballot proposition, and that has been structured in such a way to not increase the tax collection. And some have asked, well, how can you do that? And in this case, I think a picture can help explain that. And so as you see these color-coded shapes come in. This first color-coded shape is blue. The 2017-18 levy for Federal Way High School expires after the 2018 collection, so that drops to 0. The red shape represents our current debt for previously authorized bonds, which will be completely paid off by the year 2030 with some significant steps down between 2024 and 2025, so in about, well, in the near future. And the green allows, the green represents the new bonds, the $450 million ballot proposition that you have in front of you, which would be structured in such a way to layer into that other debt that is being retired as it is paid off over time.
One suggestion would be to label these, because people may not hear your words, yes, but to put the actual levy for Federal Way High School in so they can actually see it.
I appreciate that. We will do that.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell. So ultimately, modernizing our facilities will benefit our community at large, and it really has several benefits, and I'm not going to read each one of those, but allowing us to advance our goals of our strategic plan is the ultimate goal. Enhancing and expanding high-quality learning environments across our district, modernizing those learning environments to ensure future-ready students, furthermore, reducing overcrowding across the district, and improving safety and security.
So resolution number 2017-04, which is a multi-page document in front of you, I just want to highlight a couple of the aspects that are included in that resolution as the board considers that resolution for adoption on June 13th. So the resolution authorizes a vote of the people on November 7th, 2017. It sets the election date. It allows for the issuance of $450 million of general obligation bonds. It creates the exact ballot proposition wording, so you can see on the screen the current draft of that language. I do expect there'll be some refinements between now and June 13th, and it also authorizes participation in the voter pamphlet, which comes with that opportunity for the district to advertise for pro and con committees.
And that's our presentation for you.
Thank you. Any questions, directors? Director Eto?
Could you just clarify what it means to be structured to support Phase 3? I kind of understood that we're doing this and we've got a block of projects that'll be funded.
Right.
So the rest of them were going to be either up to future levies or something. So what does that statement mean?
Thank you for asking that question. We gave thought to how we could structure Phase 2 in terms of the way the bond sales are structured and the construction timelines occur and the amount of money that we're borrowing, so that when Dr. Campbell and the current board decide that it's time to go for Phase 3, that there is some capacity for the leadership at that time to be able to present a proposal to the voters based on the current circumstances. But again, trying to provide, it's really difficult to predict where we're going to be in 10 years, 8 to 10 years, but trying to accommodate the future so that future leadership is positioned to also present a package that would have little or no tax increase.
That's exactly, I was talking to the superintendent of Lake Washington, and they did the exact same thing. They've structured it so they're going out, I think she says every 4 years is what they're doing. Now, we certainly are making that proposal, but they're doing a similar thing as what Sally is describing, building and planning so that it doesn't inhibit them from then coming back and doing the same thing with little or no tax increase.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next item is 4.8, Presentation Resolution 2017-05, Major Maintenance Borrowing Resolution. Dr. Campbell?
I will ask Sally McLean to provide a brief overview. We've talked to the board about this in a study session, so you are aware of the need for borrowing, and I think the big idea is that we have not had SCAP funds because we've not had a bond, and as a result, some of our major projects have started to catch up with us, and this borrowing is really a stopgap while we start to get a bond measure in place to do some long-term maintenance over the entire facilities across the district. Sally, take it away.
Thank you so much, Dr. Campbell. I know typically we start our presentations with the purpose, but in this case, I actually am starting this presentation with a bit of a pullout of the strategic plan that maybe doesn't always get some focus, and that's around the district's operations and services, framing the role of the district level departments, and specifically recognizing the fact that school is where the scholars are, and that the core purpose of the district level teams is to provide services and supports that are responsive, high functioning, and ease the way for schools so they can focus on teaching and learning. And it might be a bit of a stretch for people to think about major maintenance easing the way, but when you have boilers that are failing and scholars that are cold in their classrooms and wearing coats, or you have roofs that are leaking, all those kinds of major maintenance pieces are, again, currently getting in the way of our classroom teachers being able to provide the very best instruction that they can. So our presentation purpose and goals, I will be outlining the major maintenance needs that have been identified. I'll define the legal parameters of this borrowing. I will share with you the limits of the borrowing, identify the repayment source, because one doesn't really like to borrow without knowing how you're going to repay this, or at least I don't. And then defining types of bonds, because now you're hearing two different presentations about bonds, and I want to make sure there's no confusion at the conclusion of this. And then I'll be talking about what the specific board action is for your consideration. So our major maintenance and program needs, we had independent consultants analyze the conditions of all of the boilers in the school district, all of the roofs, and all of our fields. And based on that independent analysis, there were a series of critical needs that were identified. And these critical needs were identified as critical up to 3 years ago. So they are a little past critical in some cases, and those things that needed to be done in 1 to 2 years are now becoming critical. And the cost of the boilers, roofs, and fields that are identified as critical total $13 million. In addition, we know we have some building upgrades required to support our STEM and STEAM initiatives at 3 sites with an estimated cost of $2 million. So that brings the resolution proposal to you for a total borrowing of 15. And you might recall to almost a year ago during the
2016 budget work studies and budget adoptions, we were talking about the need for this major maintenance and laying that foundation for the fact that we were going to need to do some borrowing in order to address this backlog. On a slightly more detailed level, so you can get a sense of where this money is being allocated, $7.6 million, slightly over half of this is headed towards boiler needs. And that includes Thomas Jefferson, Kylo, Sacagawea, Totem, the Federal Way Public Academy, Lake Duluth, Lake Grove, Olympic View, and ESC. Now, some of you, I want to point out that some of these buildings you just saw on the list that are slated to be rebuilt. And so we have done our due diligence around this, but unfortunately, and we will be able to recover about 60% of the cost of installing boilers into buildings that we're going to renovate, but we actually can no longer operate the boiler at Thomas Jefferson High School. It has to be replaced. And that is true of, the others also are in that same critical piece. And so we'll be able to recover 60% of the cost. I mean, I'd like to be able to say we can recover 100, but we won't. But we will start generating energy savings right away with the installation of those new boiler systems that will provide some relief in the general fund. Critical roof needs, and these are complete roof replacements, total $2.7 million, and I won't read that list to you. A comparable amount of money, $2.7 million for track and field upgrades, and then again, the STEAM and STEM upgrades at Sahali, Nautilus, and Woodmont. Your legal parameters, again, we work with bond counsel when we do this sort of work, but RCW 28A 530.080 allows boards to incur non-voted debt. Non-voted debt or a limited general obligation bond implies that there's no taxing authority with a non-voted debt. And that RCW allows that specifically to support infrastructure needs. There are limits to debt, whether it's LGO or regular bonds, and non-voted debt is limited to 3/8 of 1%. This $15 million is significantly below our total cap for non-voted debt. The resolution that you're considering adopting has limitations in it, much like policy governance, but it has limitations. It requires the district to issue this debt in a competitive bid process. Basically, what you're getting are interest rates back from financial institutions that are interested in lending you money. It requires that the debt be repaid within 15 years or less. It requires that the bids, when we do open the competitive bids, that the fixed interest rate not exceed 5%. And the authority to issue this borrowing expires in September of 2017. So there's a little bit of latitude in the timing of when this occurs, just in case the markets are doing something unusual and we end up rejecting all the first bids. We would want to be able to go out and solicit bids a second time, if needed. That's never happened, but if needed. Repayment source, again, these limited general obligation bonds will be repaid with current general fund resources. Specifically, a portion of the maintenance budget capacity will be used to make the principal and interest payments. Once our voters authorize the election resolution, the school construction assistance program funding that comes generated from those new bonds can be used to repay the balance if so desired. So I have to end with the vocabulary lesson. So general obligation bonds. So Resolution 2017-04, the election of the voters is a general obligation bond. General obligation bonds can only be sold after approved by 60% of the voters, and that approval results in a tax levy, which, of course, in this case, the tax collections are not increasing. So your resolution 2017-04 that Dr. Pfeiffer and I just presented is about general obligation bonds. Limited general obligation bonds, this resolution 2017-05 is a non-voted debt with no taxing authority. That's why knowing how you're going to repay it is so important.
And again, they're both called bonds, but they have very different impacts in terms of, they just have different impacts. So in terms of board action, in order to sell limited general obligation bonds, we are required by law to conduct a public hearing. So part of the June 13th board meeting will be that formal structure to recess into a public hearing to take any comment. And then once that public hearing is closed, the board has the opportunity to take action on the resolution. Are there any questions?
I just had one question, and it's probably because my brain doesn't work very well. I'm not remembering, but do we own the building that FWAPA is in? So we do. So the boiler need at FWAPA is a...
Yes.
Okay. And was FWAPA anywhere else on our list that came out? And okay. That was my question.
Director Eto?
Just to clarify, our ability to repay this debt is not contingent on that next bond passing, right? I mean,
It is
the 15
not.
years out.
It is not. There is funding within the current maintenance budget to make those principal and interest payments. And we will ensure that the bid responses and those principal and interest payments don't hamper the maintenance department from continuing to be able to address either emerging needs or regular and routine maintenance.
Thank you very much, Sally, for trying to simplify it.
Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda is Resolution 2017-06, waiver of the 180-day requirement. So I'll read this one if you'll read the next one. You want to read this?
Okay, here we go. A resolution of the Board of Directors of the Federal Public School District Number 210 requesting a waiver for Federal Public Schools grades K-12 of the minimum 180-day requirement for the 2017-18 school year. WAC 18018-040 and WAC 18018-050. Whereas the Federal Way School District has 5 goals within the district's strategic plan to increase scholar success, and whereas the research-based professional practices, signature strategies, support professional collaboration time that focuses on evidence-based dialogue relative to scholar achievement, and whereas in service of the goals of the strategic plan in order to engage professional learning communities, PLCs, in a cycle of inquiry using multiple measures to inform and adjust instruction and align with school improvement plans based on the 4-Lens protocol, a request is being made to waive the 180 days to 179 days. And whereas the scholar contact hours would be over the state required time, maintaining an average of 1,027 hours in grades 1 through 12, and the teacher work hours would be according to the full teacher contract requirements. And whereas the agreement by and between the Federal Way School District and the Federal Way Education Association supports data days, waiver days. And whereas the Washington State Board of Education has recognized the importance of education improvements and has established waivers of the 180-day school year for restructuring purposes. Now therefore be it resolved that the Federal Way School District Number 210 Board of Directors requests that the minimum 180-day school year requirement be waived for Federal Way Public Schools to allow for one non-scholar day on September 6th, 2017 for the 2017-18 school year only. During this time, scholars would not attend school in order for staff to allow for staff participation in alignment with the 5 goals of the district's strategic plan, adopted by the Board of Directors of the Federal Way Public School District Number 210, King County, Washington, in a regular meeting thereof held on the 23rd day of May 2017, Board of Education, Federal Way Public School District 210.
So at this time, I would entertain a motion.
I move the Board of Education approve Resolution 2017-06, waiver of the 180-day requirement.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I second.
Any discussion?
I would just want clarity on why it's only for 1 year. Is it intended to do every year in this fashion? Just so it's kind of clear, we're believing that we're going to get more effective teaching out of this type of a thing, and that's why we're reducing by one day?
That's a
teaching time?
great question. Thank you, Director Edo. You've also approved a calendar for this coming year, and this day was included in the calendar that the board approved. We will be using this day to have common activities across all schools to launch school improvement planning aligned to the strategic plan. But the reason we're doing it only for 1 year, we want to understand what's going to come out of the state. There are some days that are included that are possible for professional development, and we don't know what that's going to be. So we want to see what's going to come out of the state and then make a determination as to how we would use those days and how it would impact this particular day that we're waiving.
And one other point is that 3 years ago, so it's usually a 3-year cycle that you do this. 3 years ago, the board, those of us on the board approved 4 days, right? And we're moving it to 1, just that one single one that's left for the 1-year period.
We want to be very mindful about not having scholar contact time, and we're really taking that very seriously. And so that's why this would give us time to be very clear about the days that may be coming through from the state, if there are any, and then how that would impact our planning going forward.
Any other questions? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Right, next resolution. This one is Scholar-Led Conference Waiver. Federal Way Public Schools, District Number 210, Resolution 2017-07, Scholar-Led Conferences Waiver. A resolution of the Board of Directors of Federal Way Public Schools, District Number 210, requesting a waiver for Federal Way Public Schools grades K through 12 of the minimum 180-day requirement for the 2017-18 school year, WAC 180-18-050. Whereas the Federal Way School Districts believe that scholars who are able to articulate their strengths in areas needing focus have a greater chance to achieve their learning goals. And whereas the scholar contact hours remain over the state required time, maintaining an average of 1,027 hours, grades 1 through 12. And whereas the agreement by and between the Federal Way School District and the Federal Way Education Association supports parent-scholar-teacher conferences, commonly referred to as scholar-led conferences. And whereas Goal 2 of the district strategic plan focuses on high level of participation in scholar-led conferences, and Goal 1 and 4 of the strategic plan emphasizing high-quality teaching, learning, and scholar achievement. And whereas the Federal Way School District is seeking a waiver from the basic education requirement of the minimum 180-day school year solely for the purpose of parent-teacher conferences. Now therefore be it resolved that the Federal Way Public Schools District Number 210 Board of Directors requesting that the minimum 180-day school day requirement be waived for Federal Way Public Schools to allow for 4 non-scholar days, which include 2 full days in November 2017 and 2 full days in March 2018. During this time, scholars will attend school with a parent or adult representative to meet with staff for a parent-teacher conference which improves scholar achievement, scholar relationships, and scholar activities. Adopted by the Board of Directors of the Federal Way Public Schools, District Number 210, King County, Washington, in a regular meeting thereof held on the 23rd day of May 2017. Board of Education, Federal Way Public Schools, Number 210. I would entertain a motion at this time.
Okay. This is Resolution 2017-07. I move that the Board of Education approve Resolution 2017-07 Scholar-Led Conferences Waiver.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I second.
Any discussion?
I think this is critically important because it does call out that we have student-led conferences, scholar-led conferences twice a year, and that families will know that the expectation is that they'll be able to come to their school with their scholar twice a year, and it won't only be based on whether another adult in the system determines whether they need to be there or not, that there are many families who found those second opportunities, ones that they've not been able to take part in, even if they've wanted to, as well as families who've needed to take part in a second conference and perhaps have not been given that opportunity. So I really am in support of and appreciate the calling out of those 2 separate sets of times for scholars and their families.
Director Eto.
I really agree that these can't be effective unless these actually occur, and to see the 90% plus achievement rate that we're getting on these student-led conferences is really good, and I think it allows for the parents to be able to help, advocate for their child and also help them at home. So I really think it's important as well.
Director Drake?
I think collectively, as a whole school district, we are so intently focused on student-led conferences as a critical part of our scholars' success. And by calling it out like this, we can really reinforce our support of it.
So I'm going to press on one last item. A couple of years ago, we stopped the quarterly reporting of progress. And I really believe, I know we're in a contract situation, we need to go back to at least quarterly, every 9 weeks. We cannot report twice a year and expect our scholars to be successful. It's important. I have some teachers that are giving me monthly reports via email for progress of where it is. It has to be in those November and March timeframes. Here's your progress report, here's where it's at, here's what we need to do to make a change. So I would ask again that we continue to focus on that and bring that back.
I want to press the team. It's already in our contracts, that in our negotiated agreement, and I think we've talked about what we can do. We just haven't done it, and I think we need to work with technology, Dr. Pfeiffer, and the team to push out progress reports and automate it through our student information system. And there's no reason why we are not doing that, and so I want to thank for the press because you're right.
And that's what it is. Actually, it just comes out in email, right? It's amazing to see exactly where it is. You can see the gaps. So, all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. So we're now to contract authorization for certificated teachers. Am I reading this?
That's all
okay.
you're doing.
Okay. All right. So I'm just going to read it. Okay. All right. To the Board of Education from David Brower, Chief Performance Management Officer, issuance of contracts to certificated teachers. Move that the Board of Education approve the issuance of contracts to all certificated teachers, except those who have retired, resigned, or have been recommended for non-renewal for the 2017-18 school year, effective September 1, 2017. I would entertain a motion at this time.
I so move.
We have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. To the Board of Education from David Brower, Chief Performance Management Officer, issuance of contracts to certificated administrators, classified administrators, and exempt staff. Move that the Board of Education approve the issuance of all contracts to all certificated administrators, classified administrators, and exempt staff, except those who have retired, resigned, or have been recommended for non-renewal for the 2017-18 school year, effective July 1, 2017. I would entertain a motion.
I so move.
A motion, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And we're only 20 minutes late. We are adjourned.